Hey, comrades, what's up? Welcome back to Fairy Tale Story Hour. We got picking up with volume 37 of the manga here, and we start off chapter 309 with a sexy shot of Lucy. Mwah. I can't get enough. We really pick up with Natsu fighting the head of the something wolves. I don't remember what their name is off the top of there. He's got two like battle axes with like hands, and so he starts swinging at Natsu. Natsu's dodging around and whatnot, and then we see Panther Lily is fighting some acid shooting guy, and we see Mary Jane fighting some ladies using like the cards. We see Wendy getting attacked by like the flower lady, and then we get Lucy and Yukina and Arqueros along with Carla and Happy fighting fish guy. His thing's like gravity and earth magic. So we spend some time with him. He like cracks open the ground. There's like lava. Lucy and Yukina are about to fall in, and Arqueros is like super freaking out. Happy and Carla go to rescue them, but then the guy uses like gravity magic on them. And then Arqueros like jumps into the fucking lava like a boss, runs up, pushes them out of the lava, and then, you know, is like, time to die. Fortunately for him, Lucy has her little clock friend, Horologium, and he rescues Arqueros. He also, and you know, Lucy's like, how? I don't even have my keys. And like, I have my own keys, motherfucker. I do what I want. And then Leo shows up, and he's got all Lucy's keys and Yukino keys. So now they got all 12 keys. And now Lucy and Yukino are like ready to go. And then the fish guy is like, ruh-roh. And then back over with Natsu and his guy, Natsu's like, all right, I'm done playing around. And he just like grabs the battle axe the guy's using, and the guy's like, ruh-roh. The next chapter picks up with Yukino summoning Pisces, summoning Pisces, who's like a sexy MILF with her like handsome son. And so they start going to fight this guy, and then he uses gravity magic. And so she summons Libra, Gate of the Scales Palace, Libra. Yeah. Who reverses the gravity magic, and he starts getting that shit kicked out of him. So he summons a bunch of water, which Pisces weak against because it turns him back into fish. And then Lucy's like, oh, water, huh? And so she summons Aquarius, which of course like beats the shit out of him. Meanwhile, Panther Lily is overcoming the acid spitter guy, just like cuts it all in half. And then Wendy's like, oh, you tried to enchant me to fall asleep. Too bad I'm immune to enchantment. And then she starts beating the shit out of her girl, the flower girl. Mary Jane absorbs all like the poison or whatever the cards were given to her, and then she transforms into a demon form. And she has this whole funny conversation about how like magic is used to just hurt people, and but you need magic to like help protect your friends and family and stuff. And something about like the power of magic and whatnot. And then we see like her naked butt, which is excellent. And then she talks about she doesn't like being watched while she's doing her magic stuff because she doesn't want to scare people because of how powerful she is. And then she transforms into a demon, and the girl attacking her is like, oh, god damn it. Back to Natsu, he just beats the living shit out of this guy, just like punches him through a wall. And then we get like a nice shot of everybody beating the shit out of the individual people that they're fighting against. And then they all finish up in the exact same room because they punch them all through like the fucking walls. And then all four of them are just, all five of them are laying there in a heap. And it's like, hey, everybody, what's going on? And then Natsu's like, all right, you better tell us where to go or you're going to die. The next chapter picks up. We get the memorizing crafter dude. He's just like, oh, I've memorized everything. I've lost a fairy tale. Leo is carrying Arqueros back with Natsu and crew, and they're trying to find their way out of there. Yukina mentions that Arqueros wears like a jade pendant. That is probably why he didn't die to the lava. And then they're like, wait a second, the princess name means jade. There's the jade dragon. They're starting to put all this stuff together and trying to like clue out like what's going on with like clip stuff and everything else with that. They then find a big door, and Natsu's about to run up and just bash the shit out of it when that mysterious figure that's been kind of popping in with like their black robe kicks open the door, and they're like, what? Who are you? Upstairs, the princess is kind of observing everything that's going on, and she gets accosted by our little friend. Oh, the Hungry Knights. That's the name of those guys. His name is... It's like Dorian or something. It says it around here somewhere. I mean, to have Hades Palace waiting for your trial. Princess is bad. Hungry Knights was defeated. Oh, Darton. Yeah, so Darton comes up. He's the little guy who threw Cadius down in like the Hades pit, and then the princess, this is why the princess sent Fairy Tale Letter was to rescue Arqueros. And then they talk about eclipse and what it means and the use of it and going back in time and all that stuff. And then she's like, well, there's an Eclipse 2 plan. And he's like, Eclipse 2. And then she talks about if their Eclipse 2 plan fails, it's going to be the end of the world. Over with the rest of Fairy Tale, they're like meandering about town in their continued like free-for-all battle. And so Juvia is like thinking about the first master and how she is, planning everything out. And so so Juvia wanders, and then Sharia attacks her, and it's like, all right, cool. So they're just going to like slap fight for a little bit. It starts off with a pretty excellent like attack from Sharia, but then they just like slap fight. And then First Master's thinking about, okay, so next up, Erza is going to run into Minerva, but then she doesn't. She runs into Kagura, who is the head of Mermaid Tail, right? So they start fighting with their like swords, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then someone's like, "Hey, wait a second, that's not what First Master said." And First Master's trying not to cry because like her strategy's not necessarily working, and so Erza and Kagura keep going at each other, and then all of a sudden they both get like face palmed by Minerva, who shows up. And then all three of them, it's like everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, it's the best three women magic users in the whole world. They're gonna fight it out. It's a free for all." And so then they're all standing at each other like in a kind of a standoff. It's hot as shit. And they're like jaw jacking with each other, and we get some shots of people making commentary, and then they like, talk about stuff, and then the battle begins and they start fight. Let's see, they fight for a while, blasting this, sword fighting, someone's going for somebody, the other person kicks them, and that first person hits the second person, just like back and forth. And then Minerva uses her like ultimate attack, which has like crazy gibberish writing, and then it's like the 8 battle god, or what is it, the magic of the Yakuma 8 battle gods. And First Master is even like kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she can do that, because Minerva is like the most powerful member of Sabretooth, right? But then, and it's such a huge explosion, everyone like stops to like gander at what's going on. And then we see Erza and Kagura are like fine. They're kind of beat up, but they're fine. And Minerva's like, holy shit, I can't believe you guys survived that. And she's like, all right, I got a different plan. And so she pulls up this like bubble, and it's Millennia, the sexy cat lady. And it's like, what? And then they're like, Kagura and Erza are getting super pissed off, but she's like, don't worry, I'm not using her as a hostage to force your surrender. And then we jump back to the princess and Dortan, and they're talking about the Grand Magic Games and how after she tells Dortan like what's going to happen and the eclipse stuff, he's like, we got to stop the games right now. And she's like, no, some person, he keeps calling that keeps calling them my friend. It's like from the future, knows the future, and there's supposed to be some crazy thing that happens. And if this impossible crazy thing happens, and she knows that person was telling the truth, so they got to wait to see if that person's telling the truth before they do anything. And then she talks about how like what that person says is true, and that future comes to pass. Then she's going to open the eclipse door. We then bounce down to Natsu and crew, and then we see the person in the cloak. It's like Natsu's like, who the fuck are you? And then there's like crying. And then they pull back their cloak head, and it's Lucy. So there's 2 Lucys, which is like heaven on earth. We then, everyone's like the future Lucy is what we'll call her, because that's what she is, starts crying. And then, present Lucy and Natsu, and everyone's like, holy fuck, is this like a Gemini thing, or like what's going on with this? And then she, mentions she's from the future. It's like part of like eclipse, and then she like passes out, and everyone's like, oh shit, we got to help her up. And then Lucy's like, I'm like really super creeped out by this whole situation. And so then they talk about opening the door to Eclipse. Oh, sorry, Dortan and the princess back with them. They're talking about opening the door to Eclipse. And then the princess mentions that when she had all 12 of the keys, when they took them from Yukina and Lucy, she went over and like unlocked all 12 keys. So they don't need the keys anymore. They just need a human to like push open the door or whatever. They go back and forth about that, about Arcados, about everything that's going on, and that they just need to like stay and watch the games. Back with the ladies, Minerva's like, all right, I want you 2 to fight, and when you get done fighting, I will fight whoever's left, because I clearly can't fight both of you at the same time. And the Kura's like, fuck this. And so she does like some super powerful attack on Minerva, but Minerva at the very last second changes places with Erza. But luckily for us, Erza is one of the best wizards in all the world, and so she's able to like pull out her sword and block at the very last second. And the Minerva's like, bye, and then she takes off. And then there's some back and forth with Erza and Kagura about Jalal, yeah, and about everything that's going down with them. Meanwhile, Gajil is wandering around through like some aqueduct looking place, and then he runs into Rogue, and he's like, what's up? And Laxus runs into Black Lightning, who is like the God Slayer killer guy from the Lightning. Is it Lightning or Thunder? Yeah, Lightning God Slayer magic user from Sabretooth. We haven't seen him much, really. And then everyone's kind of, then it's like, the announcers are like, we're still missing Sting. Where'd he go? And it's like, nobody knows. They can't find him. And then the princess and Dortan are just kind of like watching. And then we see Sting just like sitting around. He's Sting, right? Sorry, sometimes I don't read. It's like a month since I read this. Yeah, Sting. So Sting is just sitting thinking about Lecter and whatnot. Meanwhile, while this is going on, Jalil, Marudi, and oh god, why did it slip out of my head? Ultir are all talking about somebody telling them something, and then Jalil's like, something doesn't make sense. There's something odd about what that person said who was wearing the robes, right? And then Erza and Kagura, like they start fighting. They fight. Erza looks like she's getting beat up pretty good. Kagura's like super mad. She's using like the power of her anger to like overwhelm. Erza keeps like slamming her and hitting her back and slamming her and hitting her back. Bash. Erza's fighting back. But then eventually it looks like Erza gets defeated by Kagura. Like people are like, oh my gosh, she's even stronger than Erza. Like I didn't calculate for that, something. And then at some point Kagura's like Erza's like finally gets her to tell her why she wants to kill Jalil so badly. And then Kagura tells her that her brother was killed by Jalil, and her brother is Simon. And Simon, if you don't remember, this is like a long time ago, he's one of the people who was captured with Erza in like the island with Jalil, and then he like, you know, there was like a whole thing with him sacrificing himself to protect Erza so that she could defeat Jalil and all that good stuff. And he had like this crazy like metal jaw thing, but he's the guy who died, right? So that's her brother. And then she tells like the story about how they were poor and very, you know, everything was, but they were happy. And then 17 years ago when they came, Jalil's people came to when they were like doing the tower business and like grabbed everybody up. Or like Erza too, right? When that wasn't Jalil's people because Jalil came with her. Yeah. So that, they burned the village and took everybody, but somehow she was able to escape. And then years later, she ran into Millennia, like after all this stuff, after Erza had rescued her from there. And then she had learned the fate of her brother. And then she swore from that day forward that she was going to kill Jalil. And then Erza's like, Jalil didn't kill your brother. I killed him. Like, it was my fault. And then she's like, stop trying to protect Jalil. And it's like, no, the only people who were there when Simon died were Jalil, Natsu, and me. And, she said, yes, perhaps it's true that the hand that killed Simon was Jalil's, but the one responsible for his death was not Jalil, but me. And then she starts to stand, and then Kagura gets like super angry, and she starts pulling out her sword, right? Because her whole thing is like she's never like pulled the sword out because she's saving the sword for like killing Jalil, and it's like the most powerful attack. And it's, you know, it's this whole time she's just been fighting with like a sheathed sword. It's kind of like Rurouni Kenshin. If you've ever seen that shown anime, it's fucking awesome. But and then we see like this attack go, and we see what looks like blood. And that jumps us to the next chapter where we start off the same. Everyone's like being like aghast and looking and being concerned. And then we see Kagura like release the sword, and then it's like boom, boom, boom. And there's like a giant explosion, and like there's all this force of energy and whatnot. And Erza's like, block the sword. And Erza's like, I'm not going to fucking die, you dumbass. And then she's thinking about Simon letting her live and protecting her, and how Grandpa Rob allowed her to live, and Grandpa Rob's guy like kind of took care of everybody who was in Fairy Tale, which is the whole reason Erza came to Fairy Tale in the first place. And then she gets all naked for fan service and transforms into like her like the padding over her breasts, and then like the fire pants that she is like her most powerful costume. And then she's like, all these people gave their life for me, I will not lose to you because it would dishonor their legacy. And then they go and do like some samurai fighting some more. And eventually Erza defeats Kagura, like knocks her the fuck out. And it's like, Erza won. And then everyone's like shocked and amazed. And they're like, why haven't we? She pulled her sword out and whatnot. And then like part of the building they're in like starts to collapse. And so Erza rushes over and knocks Kagura out of the way. And she's like, what? Why would you do that for me? And Erza's like, I know exactly who you are. Or maybe I should say I remembered, though I didn't know your name. But the only thing I knew you as was Simon's little sister. And Kagura's like shocked, like, you're kidding me. And then she's got a nice shot of her breast. Anyway, and then she mentions that Erza was born in the same town as Simon and Kagura in Rosemary. And that just like her, they were all, you know, she was there when all the people came and got captured and whatnot. And that she actually is the one. And then she reveals that Erza's actually the one who saved Kagura by dragging her away from everything that was going on and putting her in like a crate and telling her to hide and go live your life. And when she mentioned this, Kagura like remembers it and like recognizes that it was Erza who saved her. And then Erza got captured and took on the island and all that stuff. So she starts freaking out and crying. And then And then she mentions like, I always wanted you to live on, and I still do. And then Kagura comes up and like lifts up this rock that is crushing like Erza's legs. And then she starts saying something, and then Minerva shows up and stabs Kagura from behind with her own sword, knocking her out and taking the points away from Erza. So even though Erza defeated Kagura, it was Minerva who like sneak attacked and got the kill. And well, not kill, obviously it's like no one ever dies in these things. But I mean, people die, but it's like, not Kagura's fine. I mean, she's stabbed and like bleeding out, but she'll be okay. And then Minerva's like, I got you, motherfucker. Now I'm going to get you next. And then Erza's like, what about Miliana. And then Minerva's like, oh, she's here. And like tosses on the ground and she's all knocked down and stuff. And she's like, I get a point for that too, bitches. And then Erza runs over to grab Millennia and make sure that she's okay. And then she pulls open the back, her like cloak, and sees like her back's all scratched up. And Minerva's like, I got bored. And then Erza's like, oh, you're fucking dead now. And we jump back over to Gajil, who is fighting Rogue and beating the shit out of him. And then there's talking about like the power gap between the two of them. And he's like, Natsu could beat both of you. I can easily beat you. And then Rogue says something about like, you're not, like Jill is not on the same level as Natsu. And he's like, what the fuck you say? We jump over to Laxus and Lightning Guy. And they're going lightning fight. And then they like pause because they're pretty evenly matched. And then Juria like wanders up. And he's like, hello, I've been this guy for a long time. And then Laxus is like, hell yeah, the monster's here. And then the Black Lightning's like, oh fuck. We jump back over to Sharia and Juvia, who are having like a cat fight, like literally just like clawing each other and like bashing each other, not using like magic at all. And so we find out with them that, okay, so Juvia loves Gray, Sharia likes Leon, but Leon likes Juvia. Juvia does not. It's like it's a love triangle, but then Sharia is mad at Juvia because she likes Leon. Okay, so, and then at that point, Leon and Gray wander up, and then they're like, yay, and then Juvia does this whole thing where she's like, oh, my lover, let's get married, and our honeymoon, and all this stuff, and Gray's like, the fuck are you talking about? And then we jump back to Natsu and crew, and they're fucking lost in this place, and they're trying to figure out, we're wandering around, trying to see what's going on. They talk about like fighting the guards, blasting their way out, they don't want to do that, it's already like causing problems and whatnot, and then like Future Lucy like wakes up, and then tells them that like they got captured right after they left. So in her past, right, as soon as they left the Palace of Hades, they got captured. And then when they were captured, there was like, she kind of like blacked out for a little bit. And then she woke up, everyone was dead and everything was destroyed and stuff. And then she came back in time using the eclipse. I can't remember. This all happens like around here. And then we go jump up to the princess. We see her talking to Dortan about what her friend told her. And Lucy is telling Natsu and crew the same thing, that what happens like later today or tomorrow is that a stampede of more than 10,000 dragons will come and attack the country, and they'll burn the whole place to fucking ground. And Dortan's like, that's impossible. And like, the princess is like, yes, that's why I have to let the games commence just to see what's going on. And she explains that Eclipse 2 is a kind of like that tower thing that they use to destroy. It's not a tower, that floating island thing that the Magic Council used to destroy the tower. And so it's got the equal kind of like cannon power, and they got to use it to fight the dragons, but they're only going to do that if the dragons actually show up. And Natsu's like confused by this whole thing and like 10,000 dragons. But he's like, all right, let's go fucking fight him. And then Future Lucy's like, wait, you believe me? And he's like, of course I believe you. Why would anybody doubt Lucy? And then Future Lucy and present Lucy are like, oh, my boyfriend. And then Carla, while this is all going on, she's thinking about the vision she was having about the place being destroyed, the palace being destroyed, and about Lucy like singing, but then it wasn't singing, it was crying, right? And she's like, oh, maybe that's why she was crying. And then Carla like asks a question about like what happened. And this is where Lucy reveals she doesn't exactly remember, but that when she kind of like came to, everything was destroyed, so she went and used the palace to go back in time. And she went back in time like 4 days ago, right? But if it's supposed to just destroy tomorrow, she went back in time like a week or so. And so they question that, but it's like, oh, maybe the door is all messed up. And then while this is all going on, Arcadios is like laying there, like not passed out, but kind of like really messed up still. And then he's like thinking like something doesn't sound right with this. So same thing with Jalil. He's like, something doesn't match up or something doesn't work. And they talk about the Lacrima gaining magical power and all this stuff. And then how she went and talked to. So what I'd like you to do is go underground and meet up with Jalil's group. That's Future Lucy. And then because she told them everything as well, about coming from the future and stuff. And then Arcadios thinks about how the princess told him all this plan, and how like the princess is the one who's initiating this thing. Arcadios was kind of pretending to be a bad guy to do this, to get like Eclipse 2 going on, to get up all the energy to destroy these dragons. And then Ethereum, wasn't that the Sacred Light? Yeah, and then it's where we learn about the Ethereum, how this is similar. And then Natsu like thanks her for coming back in time and, you know, making it so they could all survive and whatnot. We jump back over to Jalil's group, And then they're like, Old Tyr and Marudi are kind of like, what do you mean? You're saying it's not necessarily all true. And then Jalil is like, are Lucy's words false, or is Lucy herself the one that is false, right? And that's the question he has. And then Gajal's like, the fuck did you, we're back to him, and he's still like, the fuck you say, Rogue? And he's like, and then he starts like talking about why that Gajil, he saw Gajil and he wanted to join Phantom Lord because he inspired him. Right. But then when Fairy Tail defeated Phantom Lord, Gajil just went over and joined Fairy Tail, and he didn't understand, but it had something to do with camaraderie and about being, the friendship and the power, and like friendship is magic and all that stuff. And so then he thinks about how Sabretooth is just like a piece of shit guild that doesn't treat people right, and how they mistreat people and how they're assholes. They like steal Lecter and they like kick Yukina out and like all this stuff. And he's like, what is this guild? What am I supposed to be fighting for? All he's starting to have a lot of doubts and stuff. And then Gajil's like, stand the fuck up, man. I don't understand anything you're saying. And he's like, listen up, bitch. That frog over there. And they both look, and it's Fro. And he's like, frog, that's a cat. And he's like, it's an Exceed, right? He's like, that's right. It's like, that's your friend. And then they talk about that a little bit. And then Rogue starts feeling this dark presence. And it's like telling him that Gajil is his enemy. Look before your eyes. And Rogue's like freaking out and is like, who's there? What's going on? And Gajil's like, are you okay, bro? Like, what are you doing? And then Rogue looks down at his feet, and then his shadow's like, I'm your shadow. I will give you power to kill Gajil. Ooh. And that wraps up volume 37, which was excellent. Fucking so hype. Anyway, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you in a couple weeks for volume 38.